Electrified, electric, what's the difference? Well, actually, a pretty big one. And if you look at Toyota's lineup of cars, you'll definitely see the difference between electrified and electric. Welcome back to the Out of Spec podcast. I'm your host, Francie, and today I'm joined by my colleague, Jordan, to talk about Toyota, huge, well known automaker with a big ol' history in the industry, and their strategy for going electric. That is interesting to say the least. We have questions, we have thoughts, and Jordan, yeah, you're just going to basically give me the lowdown because you went to an event recently and you got a good overview of what they had planned, what they are doing, and what they have now again planned for the future.
Right. They just didn't really want to talk about battery electric. I'm ironically wearing my Toyota hat and my 100% electric T-shirt today, in tandem,
Perfect.
because let's face it. I am a fan of Toyota. I mean, this hat is. I don't wear hats for companies I hate, and I don't hate or super fan any car companies. Like they all do their own things well and poorly, and it's just a mix. And our job is literally to be unbiased. So I went to just do some almost investigative journalism, basically. This was a micro event by Toyota. And I say that because 2 years ago, I was there at their headquarters, Toyota North American headquarters in Plano, Texas. They had a huge event, 5 days, and it was like big. It was like the launch of their Sequoia hybrid and, just drive everything. They unveiled the RZ, I think, or maybe they didn't unveil. I don't remember. It's a lot of things happening there. This year was they didn't have one last year, and then this year was like a really micro one. Like literally, the event was part of a day, and they had some presentations and a little tiny snippet of time where we could go drive cars. So I was like, okay, well, the only car here that's electric is the BZ4X. Of course, Lexus has the RZ, but that wasn't there for some reason. So I was like, cool, I'll drive the BZ4X and see how it is. Because notably, 2024, some improvements with the BZ4X, and that is, I think, important because that car just needs all the help it can get.
Mm. This episode is made possible by the support we get from Fort Collins Kia. If you are in the market for any electric Kia, not only do they never add market adjustments, they will deliver your car to you anywhere in the 48 contiguous states for out of spec viewers. More information in the link in the show notes. Okay, Jordan, when I am looking at the conversation online, when I'm talking to other people, it's fun to look at what automakers are doing for their electrification strategy because you can be so creative. You can absolutely like send it with software and hardware and just really be a front runner and go straight towards electric, no hesitations. Toyota is obviously not doing that. And it's been a little bit curious because sure, they can just have one EV, right? But the EV that they come out with has weird features that aren't really like EV owner friendly, and it's not the best EV ever. So that's a questionable thing. They also have definitely put an emphasis on plug-in hybrid electric vehicles being the future. They've argued that they've done their own science and research to back that, and we can talk about that a little bit too. And it's fine, right? Like an automaker doesn't necessarily have to go electric and have to be super good at electric, I guess, because it's good to have diversity, right? I'm trying to be kind of a devil's advocate for someone who does love EVs and thinks we should go about EVs. But yeah, sure, Toyota should have their own approach to electric. And if they're not super electric, I guess that's okay. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, they had me pretty stoked 2 years ago because at that presentation they talked about their strategy. Akio Toyoda was, notably saying, "Oh, by 2030 we'll have, I forget, 70 electrified vehicles." And or no, by 2030 they said they've had 30 BEVs. By 2025, they said they would have 70 electrified vehicles and
Oh,
16 battery electric vehicles. We are
that's a
5 months away
huge lineup.
we are 5 months away from 2025, and we have seen nothing from he famously said that in front of a bunch of, like, concept electric vehicles, and we've seen none of those. Now, granted, just recently, Toyota announced they would have, I think it was maybe 2 three-row SUVs coming, but full battery
Mhm.
electric, like, in the next couple of years. So, okay, that's another model. We're up to 4, I guess, because probably one will be Toyota, one will be Lexus. And here's the thing, they do make really good cars. When someone comes to me and asks for a recommendation on a vehicle and they don't want electric because actually I know our audience is very like core nerdy electric enthusiasts. I am too,
Mhm.
but a lot of people are still hesitant and they're like, you know what? Hybrid sounds great. No one's arguing about better gas mileage. And some people are even dabbling in plug in hybrids. Toyota is where I send them most of the time. They have
Hmm.
fantastic hybrids, fantastic plug in hybrids. They've been building hybrids for nearly 30 years. We are, almost 30 years out from when they unveiled the Prius. That was, the infamous hybrid vehicle. So I think a lot of people initially thought Toyota was a leader in hybridization. Maybe they'll be a leader in battery electric, but they're clearly riding their own coattails in some ways. Their own coattails being they already know how to make a car, so they have this new electric platform, ETNGA platform, and that is how they build their BZ4X and the RZ. Of course, it's shared platform with Subaru, which helps share the cost. That's fine. Great all-wheel drive system, provided by Subaru, and this helps Subaru get their car. So it's still good to have this, but
Mhm.
this car is just so incredibly compromised in so many ways in the electric mentality. I did a video at this event, just a little bit of driving the new. I won't say all new because there's not much new about it, but it's still relatively a new vehicle, the BZ4X. But man, I got in this car. It had 100% state of charge, and then a 200 miles predicted range, which is just that's class. What's the opposite of class leading? Class losing uh, range. And then charging is also like when I saw the PDF of the vehicle when they sent it over, I forgot how bad like it is. Like with charging, it says peak charging 100 kilowatts, and no one's actually really seen that. So the actual peak charging that we've seen is about maybe 80, 85 kilowatts, which is just really rough. Now they did improve the
Wow.
charging time, so you can charge to 80%. It was an hour. Now they say 35 minutes or so, but I just wasn't able to test that because this event had no time with the car. I squeezed in, I think, 15 minutes with the car. So
Mm.
we got to get one on loan out here in Colorado, maybe again to really test it out some more and see what their claims are. And I don't know, there's so much to get into here, Francie, but I did want to mention like there are people with these cars. There are
Yeah.
BZ4X owners who are happy. And
Mhm.
I was reminded in this event, this is a great car. The sound system is good. The software is pretty good. It rides well. It feels good. No one pedal driving. It's just like all the EV things you associate with EVs just aren't good, but it's just like otherwise pretty good. The screen is interesting. I don't like it looking over the steering wheel at it though, because then the steering wheel has to be too low for me.
Mm.
Um, and someone even shorter than me is probably going to struggle even worse with that. So that's just a lot of weird things that I don't like about even the carness of it. But it's objectively a pretty good car, and there are happy owners, and there's owners that are even accepting the poor charging, but they've found, like, their charging not even holding up to what Toyota advertised. So, that's the one of the issues of many, is just the cars aren't even as good as Toyota's saying they are in some ways, and Toyota's saying they're not good.
Hmm.
So
Ye I mean, yeah, can you tell me a little bit more about the you mentioned these features, like, people have them, but, like, what are these features that the typical person would be affected by when it comes to the electric parts of the BZ4X? Okay.
the DC fast charging is limited not only in speed, obviously 85 kilowatts is really poor peak number. Now, side note, the front wheel drive model has a different battery than the all-wheel drive model. Why? I don't know. But it has let's see, 100 and maybe 150 kilowatt peak charging. That's a lot better. Like the front wheel drive does charge better and it has more range. So weirdly, I'm like telling people, if you really want a BZ4X, just get the front wheel drive one. You'll be happier. Unless you really need that all wheel drive system that it is known for. It's known for being a good all wheel drive system. But yeah, DC fast charging at launch was limited to twice a day, which is really rough if you want to do any sort of road trip.
Mhm.
And if you have no home charging like that, could I guess be an issue. They have now since upped it to 3 times per day, but that's still not great. But they they think that people don't really want to road trip much, and here's the thing. Maybe they're right because if this is people's experience, they're not gonna want a road trip. Like, it's almost like they're
Yeah.
creating the problem and then telling people that that's what the problem is.
I
Something
mean,
like
it's
that.
interesting. It kind of begs the question of like, okay, but when you buy an EV, should you be able to drain the battery as you want, to charge it as you want, to treat it however you want? I mean, I would argue, yeah, it's mine. I should be able to charge it however I want. But yeah, it's kind of like they designed this to not really even be what we and like as Americans treat as a car, which is to take us anywhere. It's more of like a little golf cart where you shouldn't be taking it. Who would take a golf cart on a road trip? No one would think to do that. So why would you think that for the BZ4X? But it is odd because they offered like I can't remember the exact deal, but free charging, unlimited charging on the EVgo network, and people would. I mean, that's kind of a good selling point for a lot of people. Is like, okay, I'm going to get free public charging. Maybe I don't even have charging at home, so it's great. I'm going to have free charging for a year or whatever, and then I'll be able to charge it whenever I want. And then, I mean, maybe you even drive a lot for work and you need to fast charge a lot. So it does seem extremely limiting on a car. And I think it also begs the question, okay, so Toyota doesn't want to go electric, but why would you come out with such an oddly not great electric car? Wouldn't you at least want to start strong? But that doesn't seem to be the
That's
approach.
Yeah, I think their approach, and I'd love to. I mentioned this in my video, but I'd love to have someone really in the weeds at Toyota talk to us about it because I'm not trying to attack them or hit them, hit on. No, I don't. This is not a hit piece. This is like we're just trying to understand the strategy here because yeah, they could have come out swinging with an amazing EV, but
Mm-hmm.
my thoughts and feelings given the information at hand is that they don't have the capability apparently.
Mm-hmm.
And so unless they were just really trying to make something semi affordable. That
Mm-hmm.
being said, I can't really recommend the BZ4X to like anyone because it's so compromised in so many ways on the EV side of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so if someone's buying an EV, there's just so many other EVs that are better and cheaper. Like it'd be different if the BZ4X was like really cheap and the specs on paper are not that off of like a Nissan Leaf that is half the price. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
pretty bad. This is a much nicer place to be, better software. Like this is not a Nissan Leaf. This is a solid car. But it feels like this is a beta test. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they just have 1 EV for each brand, Toyota and Lexus, and maybe they're just learning a ton. I hope they're learning a ton on this. Like, they're seeing the reviews, which are all pretty poor, just across the board,
Yeah.
and it's disappointingly confusing. I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. Maybe that's the title of this podcast. No, just kidding. But even then, on the note of the charging, is like, the Lexus, um,
Mm-hmm.
is a premium car. It's a luxury car, and they're very proud of their luxury experience. What they quote is that the luxury experience of like an EV owner is not DC fast charging. They said your luxury experience is charging at home and driving around town, and then when you want to go on a road trip, you use one of your 30 days of free rentals on a hybrid and take basically a gas hybrid car on a road trip. That's literally what Lexus officially says for their RZ owners. When you buy an RZ, you get 30 days. I don't know if that translates to used at all. I don't know if the 30 days goes with the car. It's not per year, it's 30 days over the life of the car. So if you have the car for a few years, that's not that many days of rental. So
Mm-hmm.
they clearly just don't think people are road tripping or they don't want
Yeah.
people to road trip. It's a little rough.
Or they know it's gonna be hard, so, "Hey, we're gonna throw you a bone and offer you 30 days." Yeah, again, this is interesting because it's not making a holistic experience that folks seem to strive for. Like, when Tesla is the model for EVs, it's because they created a great car that can charge well and go the distance. They also have the charging network, they have the app, they have the software, it's all vertically integrated, and then Tesla creates a bit of a fragmented not Tesla, Toyota and Lexus create a bit of a fragmented experience, which is just a different approach. I mean, I know that their reasoning behind it. I briefly brought up that one thing where they have this science around limited resources and how making one EV is equivalent to 6 plug-in hybrids, which or I don't know exactly how it even flows, but basically that, like, we shouldn't make EVs because we're eco-conscious. But
Right.
I mean, I don't know. I again, that's another point to, like, we would love to have someone from Toyota on to kind of really explain the strategy and approach. Because from our point of view, I think working in the space, it is unlike any other approach. And it's also interesting for me that Subaru would partner with Toyota on this because Subaru does make, again, also really reliable, great cars, and they're focused on, like, I love the outdoors. Like, I'm going to spend time in the outdoors and I'm eco forward. And then they come out also with not the best EV option ever. But then that does make me think, okay, so they came out with this first model. Now they have this new model year, but distinct you kind of mentioned this, but how distinct is it? Are there any improvements really?
You wouldn't really know. I mean, the average person just wouldn't know. So I don't know. There's a lot of theories, and even I mean, some official responses of Toyota, like when I tried to ask about the BZ4X improvements or limitations,
Mhm,
um, and so the issue with the DC fast charging, slow speeds, and also limited numbers of DC fast charging, it seems to be a bit of a hyper conservative approach, which Toyota touts themselves as conservative. It's a conservative approach because of protecting the battery, perhaps. The batteries are
mhm,
not made in house. They're not designed or built by Toyota. CATL is maybe the front wheel drive one. I forget who has the batteries where, but it's maybe they're being hyper conservative because the battery supplier is telling them what they're capable of. I don't know. It just strikes me as nothing's being portrayed to the end consumer.
mhm,
Um, so that's just left to a lot of guessing. So the customer is left to like wonder, why is my car so much worse at charging than my friend's car that is,
mhm,
the same size and price and everything. It's just a
mhm,
worse EV. So
mhm,
there's that aspect of the conservative nature of maybe protecting the battery because Toyota and Lexus are known for being very reliable, long-lasting products. So perhaps that's my theory is they're trying to just make it extremely like give the battery as long a life as possible, as good of a chance as possible to last the life of the car because their other vehicles are known that way. That's
mm,
one theory. But I don't know. It's still hard because if you want the ownership experience to be good because of the life of the car lasting forever, then why do we have almost no over-the-air update capability? The only thing
mhm,
over-the-air update capable is the infotainment,
mhm,
which desperately needs some updates because it's okay. It has Toyota's new infotainment, but no route planning. And I was like, "Why don't you have route planning?" And they were like, we're just still working on that, unfortunately." And their official response is, "Well, CarPlay has chargers in it, so you can find chargers in CarPlay." So that's
so
that.
someone
Uh,
else can handle it. Yeah, figure it
yeah.
out. Yeah. It's weird
So
because it's like they're setting up their owners for not for the one of the worst EV experiences possible. Like, you can't charge when you want, you can't navigate where you want. We're not working on route planning, but it has a decent sound system, like, you might not hate it driving around. But when we think about, yeah, again, the holistic EV experience, it just doesn't seem to match up with other strategies, and I'm having a hard time finding the
no
solid argument in there.
no one there seemed excited about battery electric vehicles.
Mm,
They really are excited about the full send on hybrid and, not even everything's hybrid. They have some pure gas, they have some hybrid, some plug-in hybrid, but only 2 plug-in hybrids. Like, that's not very many, at least
mm,
on the Toyota side, across all their lineup. And on one hand, I'm glad they're popular. A lot of people love the Prius Prime and the RAV4 Prime.
mhm,
RAV4 Prime is ironically, direct competitor to the BZ4X. It's the same. Not everyone knows that. BZ is beyond zero. The 4 is a category of car size. RAV4, BZ4, same car size, and then X for crossover. So I don't know why it's not a RAV4X because it's also a crossover. Whatever. I don't make the rules. They have their same silly naming conventions. But it's interesting that like a lot of people are really like gung ho on hybrids and plug-in hybrids, and plug-in hybrid is a good way for people to try out charging. But like talking to a lot
Yeah.
of employees, none of them had really driven much electric, especially not the competition. Hardly any BZ4Xs.
Mhm.
I'm guessing that not much of the upper management is really living with EVs, and that's a whole other podcast discussion we could have on
Yeah.
whether more people at higher positions should be driving EVs if they're touting all these EV goals,
Mhm.
'cause then they'd understand really what it's like. So,
Mhm.
I feel like I'm rambling at this point, but it's just this was fascinating. On one hand, I was like, "Why am I going to this event? They only have 1 EV, we already know everything about it." On the other hand, it was interesting to get, just the lay of the land and try to understand what's their electric strategy. This is Toyota headquarters, and they had no DC fast charging that I could see. I mean, maybe they have, like, a little one hidden from everyone, but, like,
Mm. Yeah.
as far as I could tell, they had level 2 chargers, and that's how they top it off.
Yeah, then how yeah, it's like, then how are you gonna build the right the electric vehicles that are really gonna compete with those that are going full electric, and you did mention kind of this, that they're, bringing battery electric vehicle production to Kentucky. This is a press release from them from February of this year, that they have a $1.3 billion investment that is reinforcing their commitment to stable employment and future production, including, this investment at their flagship Kentucky facility for future electrification efforts, including the assembly of an all-new three-row battery electric SUV for the US market. So that's, I mean, again, another plan, but until we see the realness of it, the reality as something actually built. I think with Toyota, we're not sure. They might just stick to the plug-in hybrids, the hybrids, and, the BZ4X and the Lexus RZ. R
Well,
Is it
and I
just
mean
RZ?
yeah, RZ, 450E or something like that. Um,
Right.
I'm really curious about this three-row SUV. Well, A, when will it come out? Will it actually come out in the next few years, or, like, will this be sort of I don't wanna say vaporware, I'm sure it will come out, but it's like, how soon? And
Mhm.
then if you're this delayed on your battery electric strategy that you touted a couple years ago, does that mean you realized how far behind you are and you are really, like, working on making a good vehicle? Because that's
Mhm.
fine with me. If you're delayed, okay, let's hope it's because you really are putting a ton of engineering effort into making a good car. Don't
Mhm.
release early or on time if the car is not good. So, how
Mhm.
much have they learned from BZ4X and the RZ, and what will they take to the three-row SUV, or will that just be a big BZ4X, for lack of a better term, which
Hmm.
would, again, not be a compelling argument. Like, they do make great SUVs, good
Yeah.
three-row SUVs, and so even if they take that and electrify it and even put in the mediocre components, there will still be happy owners. But
Mhm.
it's not forward thinking enough.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
I mean, maybe that's sorry, go ahead.
No, nothing. I mean, I'm just thinking like we love competition. So would love to see an automaker who's made great cars over the years make a great electric option. Battery electric, and a three-row SUV would be great too, because that's a big undertaking. It's a good challenge
Yeah.
in the electric space. So I'm also want to ask you, okay, so like you were talking about them taking lessons. If you were going to, say, "Hey, you should really take these lessons from everything I know when you're going forward with the BZ4X or the RZ or a new model," then what would it be? What would you change? Sounds like you like the sound system.
Yeah, like, and it's fine. It's just like nothing was class leading. And so I just feel like it'd be interesting to go against the competition, like, try the competition. Competition's good for the industry, and
Mhm.
there's they need more engineers and executives to drive electric, both internally, drive your own car and realize some of its shortcomings. Maybe they already know and they're just still trying to be proud of it, but also drive the competition and do it in like it feels like a cop out for them to be like, "Oh, well, we didn't design this for road tripping because we know people don't like road tripping." We see all the time, especially in our huge growing audience, like, a lot of you guys are road tripping aficionados. Like, you've learned how to optimize. You don't even need to work that hard to optimize because a lot of these cars that you own just does it all for you, and that's proper experience, and you guys are happy. There's a lot of ecstatic EV road trippers. I meet you guys at chargers all the time. You're in the middle of nowhere in, like, Utah, and you're like, "Heck yeah, I'm going on an adventure." Um, I just don't think it's frustrating to have that approach. It doesn't feel like an embrace of EV. It feels like a cop out of like, well, not everyone like does road tripping, so we're just not going to optimize our EV for that. But you really can't alienate those people. So I don't know. As kind of a final thought of discussion, they did a huge presentation on sustainability and where they're at with their carbon footprint. And I'm just curious if maybe there's some industry experts out there we could talk to on
Mhm.
the carbon footprint of initial,
Yeah.
like building an EV, a plug-in hybrid, and a hybrid
Mhm.
versus the carbon footprint of the long life. And I know a lot of research is already out there. I need to do more reading on that existing research
Yeah.
because I wonder if there's a partial truth to their hyper focus on hybrids barely making any EVs. Is that
Mhm.
because the initial footprint of making an EV, yes, is a bigger battery, it is a maybe a bigger carbon footprint, and if they all they care about right now is the immediate carbon footprint, then it would make investors and every stakeholders and everything happy to see initial carbon footprint like goodness. I don't, for lack of a
Mhm.
better term. Whereas with a full battery electric, I know the carbon footprint is much better the longer the car exists. So if they were making all BEVs right now and not all the hybrids, sure, the initial carbon footprint would be huge and look terrible, but then the gradual payoff for the world, I guess, is a much better scenario because you just have no emissions. So
Mm.
I don't know. That's what I was curious about is the hyper focus on carbon neutrality immediately, is that detracting from your focus and intention on battery electric?
Yep. I think that's a good question, and of course, like, we could read the research about and we do read the research, and we know the research about the emissions that are happen in production, but to also have an expert to come on the podcast would be awesome to explain it to everyone, because while we can understand it, it's always fun to, like, have it come from folks that are really in there, and, I mean, there's an extension out for that if anyone knows anyone, and then, of course, Toyota. To explain this a bit more, it sounds like you could have used a few more technical experts at the event as well, but yeah, I wanna know what our audience thinks too. Like, is it good to have a balance of some automakers that are, like, playing a little bit of the devil's advocate with EVs? And, I still think it would be cool if they could prove, like, yeah, we might not love them, but we're gonna make a great one because we can, but we just will also probably make more plug-in hybrids. I think it's interesting. I think some people can get a little passionate about it because they're like, "Come on, Toyota, we wanna see you do it well, and we're
Yeah.
waiting."
And I don't wanna, like, overly pick on Toyota, like, I do think
Yeah.
they are a market leader with electrification. They have
Mhm.
more hybrids than, like, anyone, and they're not the only companies with 1 single EV or 2 if you count Lexus. I mean, we have Honda with the Prologue, which is
Yeah.
also not entirely in-house built at all, actually mostly not in-house built,
Yeah.
and also not a class leading EV. Um, they have the Acura version as well. We have Mazda, which of course is a smaller company, but hey, there's a
Mhm.
lot of smaller companies building EVs. There's a lot of companies that are just not forerunners. That's kind of a pun. They're
Mhm.
not leading the forefront of electrification in the battery electric sense. And I think with Toyota's size and engineering prowess, because they make some incredible vehicles, I didn't expect Toyota to be down in the ranks with like Mazda and Honda. And so I'm surprised. And it was interesting to get there and just be like, no one really cared about the BZ4X. They had a Mirai there as well, which is interesting. And no one really cared about that because
Hydrogen, yeah.
hydrogen seems like a big challenge right now, especially with recent closures of like Shell public hydrogen filling stations. And it's just that sounds like a hard ownership experience. They're really full send on other things. They have their mindset in other places. And I sort of half jokingly put a video on Twitter of me being like, "Hey, what's your electrification strategy?" And they're like, "Oh, here's the keys to the new manual Supra." Um, but that kind of was it. They're like, they have all these like manual sports cars there and like big like 3-row hybrid and gas like GX and Land Cruiser, and like those were what everyone cared about. All the
Yeah,
journalists,
because 'cause they're
all the
great
journalists were
cars.
focused, yeah, on
Yeah.
those cars, and they're great. They're market leaders in that way. The new 4Runner, everything was there. It was like a kid in a candy shop. All these journalists were so excited, and that's great to see. They're still good cars, but we're over here in the EV side of things, really trying to figure out that niche, and they don't have that niche covered.
Mm. I think that sums it up pretty well, Jordan. I wanna know what folks think about this. There's many different strategies, but some do leave us hmming and hawing when it comes to electric. Thanks, Jordan, for filling us in. Everyone, check out the Out of Spec reviews video on this when it comes out. I've seen it already. I got the sneak peek. It's great. And yeah, thanks, Jordan. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in for another episode of the Out of Spec podcast. Drive safe, stay charged, and of course, let us know what you think in the comments. See you next time. Bye.